agenda. Liz, you're there, right?
I am,
Liz?
and now not yet.
Awesome, cool.
Yeah, yeah. All right. I think actually before we start onto the agenda, I wanted to acknowledge something that came up in a private call with the TOC members, which is about the usefulness of some of these calls. We haven't figured out exactly what the solutions are here, but I wanted to at least acknowledge that there are folks who are seeing this as not a great forum for interaction. I would like to encourage more interaction. I would like to encourage more discussion. And I am all ears to hear ways that we can make this and other interactions more useful. So that's my kind of preamble. With that said, let's move on and work through the agenda. Chris, do you want to talk about these deadlines, CFPs?
Yeah, sure. KubeCon is coming up, and there's a bunch of kind of other events that are co-located with KubeCon that have CFPs, like Cloud Native Security Day, that are still open, and then our Kubernetes Forum event still has a CFP that's open until September 6th in Seoul and Sydney. So just a friendly reminder for folks that you're looking to, have another shot to get your talk into these types of events, CFP is open.
Great.
Cool. And here are KubeCon's dates and all that goodness for next year.
Okay. I think you should probably also talk about this report.
Yeah, sure. I sent an email to the TOC list, but essentially we're doing in-depth project journey reports that kind of showcase the birth of a project to graduation in CNCF, pulling up some interesting data, showing contributions over time from different organizations, diversity of projects and so on. So we plan on doing these for all of our graduated projects over time. If you have any input on the layout of the report, let us know, but we plan to kind of use the Kubernetes project journey report as a template for other projects. Any questions here?
I have a general question, which is if people would like to see different information in that. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, so I'm thinking in the abstract, but if there is other information that people would like to see in these kinds of reports, what's the best way for them to ask?
You could just email me, email us. So it's the best way to kind of do it right now. There's no kind of issue tracker for this, but we're happy to take suggestions over email. And if there's types of data that people want to see, there's always dev stats available, and you could file issues there if there's a specific type of piece of data that you're looking for.
I'm going to insert my standard rant here that I think counting sort of code contributions doesn't capture all activity, and it's the thing we have, not necessarily the right thing. And I don't have a better idea. So to make pretty graphs, but it always bothers me when we focus on that stuff. So, insert standard rant.
I certainly agree with the premise that it's not actually capturing truth, but just to be clear, it's not code contributions. It's any comment on an issue or a pull request or code contributions.
Right.
I wonder if there's not a way that we could, sorry, this may be distracting everything, but have sort of a opt-in, I did other things, in the sense of could you say, hey, I did a meetup? At some level, it's dark, not accurate data, but it might be a way to capture some of the non-GitHub things.
That's actually a really good point. Do we track any of that kind of non-activity, non-online activity, those kind of meetup type things, blog posts, all that kind of maybe it's too broad.
I don't think we track anything if it doesn't have an API to do it. So that's GitHub basically as far as that.
I will mention that we actually are working on the same challenge right now for the CNCF Ambassador program, where we want to automatically move people to emeritus status if they don't touch the community in 4 months or something. So we are investigating essentially an API for some of those other engagements.
So we're big fans of DevStats. I came in late to the conversation, but we're big fans of DevStats over at the Falco project, and we're trying to use it more to kind of gauge our project health. Of course, you know, any data is not necessarily perfect. I like the idea of meetups and blog posts and being able to find a way for us to track those, because right now what you can do in DevStats is overlay releases. And so it'd be really nice if we could overlay kind of real world activity, and does it, you know, does KubeCon lead to a 30% increase in contributions? Those sorts of things, right? When we can start to overlay events on the graphs would be excellent for us.
I think that would be really great. And I love the idea of, like, if we're tracking things like what ambassadors are doing, could we also open that up to other people somehow to talk about? I mean, could we use a Meetup API? I don't know, like, is there some way that we could track how much community activity there is around different projects?
And one way to do that would be the maintainers file, or some sort of a file on the GitHub projects, which could map back into like the JSON document that we have for companies right now in DevStats. But this is too technical, I feel. Sorry.
No worries.
Hey, who's the maintainer of this data? Who maintains these APIs and the DevStats?
CNCF.
Okay.
We do.
Is there a person at CNCF that we could contact?
There is a public repo, CNCF/DevStats, where you could file issues to feature requests, a new type of query. Many CNCF projects have taken advantage of this.
Okay.
Quick shout out, it's Lucas Griglicki is our DevStats person, and he's somewhat magical if you need really insane SQL queries like we did for this report. But we would like request to him to go through the repo.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So kudos to Lucas. It's great.
Cool.
So Brian's made the point that blog posts, social media, etc., are tracked by media reports. Is there a way that we could pull those media reports into DevStats?
Potential.
Yeah, we send out a quarterly report to every project right now, every non-Sandbox project that we're pulling from a third party called TrendKite. And so I don't know that we literally want to put them into DevStats, although we could, but at the very least, the data is available.
Yeah,
Feels
sorry,
like
I arrived a little bit late. What would be the point of incorporating that information into DevStats? They kind of provide different views on the projects.
I think two things. One is whether or not those DevStats are just recording code-based, GitHub-based contributions. But I think the other interesting point that Michael did
that's what they're intended for, to be clear, though.
Well, the larger question, Brian, that we were talking about is the fact that we focus on DevStats because that's what we have, and that, you know, is there a way to capture a better picture of contribution beyond just what shows up in GitHub? And so whether it's DevStats or something else, the idea of having some way to track other types of data, self-reported or not, you know, is the ongoing discussion here.
Yeah, and if we use a tool like Meetup or Eventbrite to track attendance to meetups, we might be able to get an API out of there.
I wonder whether it wouldn't be useful just to label this data as GitHub contributions. I think part of the problem is that people think that contributions mean something more general than what happens on GitHub, and this data only measures what's on GitHub. So maybe that'll help.
I mean,
Yeah.
It's always good to say where the data comes from in a presentation. So I'm in favor of just putting that on the slide somewhere.
relatedly, I think getting a better idea on meetups in general and making sure that, you know, they're vendor neutral, et cetera, and follow the COC and, you know, would be great too, but that's kind of a different topic.
Yeah, we do some of that work, Joe, and we're going through kind of an audit process now of, I think there was a huge explosion of Kubernetes related meetups, and some of them have kind of withered away. So we're kind of going through an audit right now for all CNCF related meetups.
And I'd be really interested to, get a picture of like, how do meetups, other kind of activities around the other projects, I think we can all probably have a gut feel about what's happened in our own cities around Kubernetes, but what are people having Envoy meetups? I just picking a random project.
But a lot of the CNCF meetups cover a lot of different projects at different times. It's probably quite difficult to track.
True. I had no idea whether it's possible to track. I'm just, thinking out loud now. Yeah. All right, so interesting stuff in the project journey. Encourage everyone to read it and then figure out whether there's other information we should be asking for in these reports. Let's move on. Chris, did you want to kick off, or Amy, if Amy's there?
Yeah.
I'm here,
don't know if Amy.
I'm here.
Sure. Yeah, it's survey season time, so we're basically doing a couple things here. One is asking for input from folks on this call and the TOC on kind of questions we ask maintainers. They're all on GitHub now, so it should be very easy to add or modify any questions there. And then we're also looking to kind of do a survey,
And Chris, you've muted yourself. Still muted. I mean, I can certainly pick up from here. We are definitely looking to be able to do more of a survey around where we're going with maintainers, and we'll be launching this in a couple of weeks, so please come and give us your feedback.
I actually have a giant amount of feedback on these surveys, so you will hear from me on that. And in fact, I've already started making comments in a document. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. All right, Chris, it looks like you are also phone muted as well.
I'm back. Sorry, my phone died.
I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to say about the surveys.
No, just please send feedback and questions. We'll leave this open for about 2 weeks to give people time to give feedback, and then we'll send it out and have things hopefully ready by KubeCon.
Great. I think this is a good example of something where we want to make it good and meaningful and not regret it afterwards when we get them going. So hence I have quite a lot of feedback. All right.
Yeah, FAQ. Might as well have one finally, so feel free to add any questions to it that come up quite often. So.
Yeah, I think I saw the first draft of that. It was a good start. I'm sure people have a lot more questions. So I think it's perfectly a good idea to raise an issue if you have a question, even if you don't have the pull request for the answer. Okay. Are we on to SIG updates? Yes, right. Justin, are you SIG security person today?
Yeah, no, but on the other hand, I can't. Can I say anyone else is on SIG security today?
I'm here.
Okay.
This is JJ.
JJ, hi.
Hi, okay.
Hey, Liz, how are you? Yeah, I think I put in the slides so I could give a quick update on where we are. So since this is the first update to TOC, I thought I'll just pull in the current stats for where SIG security is. We have about 53 members from 39 different affiliations. The link is there in the member section. So anybody who wants to join in, participate, help us out, more than welcome. We have more work than we can handle right now. As far as activity is concerned, I think we finalized on governance that describes about the charter, roles, and process. Again, it's not set in stone. Any inputs and suggestions to make improvements to that is more than welcome. So we started off the assessment process. Thanks to Liz for kickstarting that initially. So we got In-Toto done. In-Toto is primarily done by Justin Capos, and Justin Cormack helped out on that as well. So thanks to them. And it's been a full-on team effort of assessment. And then there is like many of assessments coming through, like OPA is the next one that I think we are starting to take a look at. There is heavy planning for Cloud Native Security Day that's going on. Michael Lucy from Sysdig is sort of helping us shepherd that thing, along with Amy has been tremendously helpful on that with Emily. So that's as far as the activity goes. And there is an assessment guidelines that Sarah had helped shepherd and craft. It's pretty detailed, and there is a lot of inputs that we could get from this community, this group in general, in terms of like how to stay neutral while still being affiliated with an organization. I think the neutrality is a question that everybody struggles with in terms of like wanting to do the right stuff versus still having a job and being affiliated with some company, right? So we've tried listing out guidelines. Justin Capos has helped from his perspective of how academics do this. So any inputs there, and it's open for review. So I've put the links there. So if you can go comment on it, it'll be more than appreciated to improve the neutrality there. So I'll pause here. That's mostly what I had.
I think related to that neutrality, I think Sarah raised an issue against the TOC for sort of across the TOC guidelines on neutrality, which I think is a great idea to be clear about that. So yeah. I do have questions. So is there like a roadmap that you have published for which assessments you're going to do next? What order they're planned for?
Yes, there's a GitHub issue with that, and it's been revised a few times, but it's current. It should be current.
Yep, there is.
Oh, is it assessments listing? Maybe no.
I'm currently on the phone, but I could link it to this doc once I get off. Or I think Justin can point you as well.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's totally fine for us to be iterative, and if we write down a roadmap and then we have to change it, that's okay. But I think it'd be quite helpful to see what's expected coming down the road.
Sure. That makes sense.
Okay. Any other question? Actually, I will raise another point now that might be sort of timely. Again, coming from a discussion that we had in a private call last week, which is really thinking about how we assess projects in general, like the process of projects coming to the CNCF is currently triggered by a process coming to the CNCF saying, I would like to be part of you. We, in last week's discussion, raised the point that we would like to be more strategic about this and be more cognizant of gaps in the landscape and be reaching out for projects rather than necessarily just taking things in the order in which they come to us. So one of the things that we will, I expect, shortly be reaching out to the SIGs around is to ask you to be prioritizing thoughts around the landscapes in your areas and what gaps you see missing in those landscapes, what projects we should be prioritizing in your area, or what kinds of projects we need to have within the CNCF. So that's kind of a heads up that is going to come down the road, interrupting the SIG updates. Any questions before we move on to SIG storage?
So I linked the current assessment list in the chat.
Oh, brilliant.
It wasn't, it's actually in the repo now.
Okay.
So do we want to go on to SIG storage?
Let's do that. Yes, thank you, Alex.
Okay, so I've kind of split it into a couple of groupings. So we've been fairly busy doing a few reviews. So we've completed reviews of the Longhorn project and the Chow Biofish project, which we completed questionnaires and sort of project presentations and a bunch of reviews with the team. These are both Sandbox projects, and we've shared the sort of the presentations and the recordings of sort of the sessions that we had with the team to the TOC mailing list, and I'm hoping that that has been sort of useful for the team. One of the asks that we have from SIG storage is, you know, are these questionnaires that we're trying to put together useful in recording the information that you need to help make, you know, sponsorship decisions or you know, ultimately decisions as to whether they join Sandbox or not. So far it's you know, specifically for the Sandbox projects. We need to put something else together for incubation projects. So I'd love to hear any feedback from sort of TOC members to understand if they're finding this useful. Is there something we've left out? Are there other things you'd like us to cover when we're doing reviews with projects before we send the information over to the TOC? We just started following the TOC project call where Dragonfly was proposed to incubation, and then handed over to the storage SIG to do a bit more of an in-depth review. We've just started that process. We've had a project presentation from the team, but we need to go through the process in a bit more detail, as this is our first incubation level project that we're reviewing. So we'll be putting some templates together around that for other incubation projects too. In terms of content that we're putting together a set of content which we're hoping to launch in time for KubeCon in November. The first bit of content is augments the existing storage landscape white paper, which we launched at last KubeCon. In that white paper, we kind of covered all the different attributes of storage and various terminologies and different systems, from sort of, you know, all the way from block file systems, object stores, key value stores, etc. But we thought databases probably deserved a bit more focus, and we didn't have the skills and the team at the time to draw that up. So we're putting together an update to the white paper to cover the database landscape as well. And then similarly, one of the things that came out of the white paper was people asking us about, you know, how do we measure the different attributes of storage systems. So we thought performance was a good place to start, and we're going to be putting together some information describing standard tools and standard processes that people can use to benchmark different storage systems. So this isn't about actually measuring storage systems ourselves, but it's about sort of educating which tools people can use when comparing different storage systems or different cloud providers or different services. And then finally, we're also building out, again, as a follow-on from the white paper, where we wanted to document better ways or better real-life use cases as follow-ons from that landscape to kind of say, these are some options that you can use for different types of use cases. So some storage options that you can use for different use cases. So the proposal at this stage is to kind of build out a Git repository of sort of markdown documents per use case that would cover a number of different use cases, and for each use case there would be one or more options of sort of storage solutions or storage recommendations for that particular project or use case, and we're hoping to do some useful use cases maybe around some databases, but also have a focus on use cases related to CNCF projects. So things like, you know, Prometheus and etcd and TIKV, etc., which are already projects in our list. And then finally, last month we had quite a busy month. We put together a webinar, a CNCF webinar, which had a good attendance. About 170 people turned up for that, and we covered our storage landscape as well as some of the integration options specific to Kubernetes, which was pretty good, and we had some really good Q&A session at the end of that. We've set up, from a logistics point of view, we've set up a new mailing list, and we're just porting people over from the old working group mailing list to the new CNCF mailing list. And we've also spent some time to put together a storage survey to kind of help us guide us in terms of, you know, what end users' pain points are, what information end users would like to see out of the SIG. We haven't had a fantastic response rate so far. Only about 20 people have responded, so it's not a great bit of information there, but we're hoping to get some more information back from that soon.
I'm thinking, Chris, Amy, presumably the CNCF could help distribute that survey link to a wider group. Yes?
That would be useful.
I think that seems like a great idea as well, actually doing that survey. I'd love to see more of that kind of input.
I'm going to be a little bit more blunt than Alex was. So we really need end user feedback, and we put a lot of trouble into putting the survey together. And we did go through the CNCF end user groups and various mailing lists, and the response rate, to be perfectly blunt, was shockingly low. If you're an end user and you want to give some input, this is a really good opportunity to do so. So yeah, let's please rally behind this. I keep hearing complaints that end users struggle to have a forum to, you know, provide their feedback, and here's a great opportunity to do so.
Do we use social? Do we have a way to use the various CNCF social media to push this kind of thing out? Because that seems like a great way to reach people, like Kubernetes IO or whatever CNCF. Like, send out a survey link on that thing.
Right, yeah, did that happen at all? It seems like a no-brainer that should.
Yeah. I mean, we do it for some surveys where if there is a particular need from a project or someone, we're generally happy to tweet something out or send something kind of via Cube Weekly or a mailing list.
It feels in some way like we should have a little bit more like cookie cutter things here. You know, sort of like, I mean, we have all these checkboxes for how to do a PR or how to do a KEP or whatever. Feels in some ways like we should have a cookie cutter for this.
Agreed.
And do you have a targeted list of actual individual users that you want to feedback from? Because often if it's a personal request, like, you know, we're specifically requesting feedback from this particular user, you know, instead of a blast of trying to get a lot, that's probably more effective as well, is target a few specific users that you would have.
And contact them. And we didn't do that. We actually discussed this when trying to sort of analyze where we went wrong, and definitely quality rather than quantity is valuable here. I think having, a relatively small number of high quality feedbacks from important users is arguably more important than having, hundreds and hundreds of much more superficial responses from, mom and pop shops. Obviously both are valuable, but yeah, quality rather than quantity, I think, is the key.
Did the questions in the survey give you the information about whether a response is quality? Like, I don't know, is it a big enough organization or something? I'm thinking, can we do harm by spreading it broadly?
We did put a lot of effort into that. Sorry, Alex, I didn't mean to hijack your presentation. Feel free to take over. But yes, we put quite a lot into figuring out how to, be able to analyze the data afterwards. So how big is your company? What kinds of things are you using? All that kind of stuff is in the survey. So the intention being that we can differentiate the big users from the small users and the experienced users from the inexperienced users, etc.
Great. So if we try to scattergun the survey widely, you'll be able to extract the useful quality information from it.
I believe so. That was the design of the survey, certainly. If that was not the case, then we failed.
All right. So Amy, Chris, if we can try to support getting that broadcast, I think that would be really useful.
So thanks for all that. I mean, that would be great. Just one last thing. So just before we close out, it would be really, really good to get some formal TOC feedback on whether you think the information that we're collecting in the project reviews is the right type of information for you. And if you have, if we've missed anything, or if you'd like to see other things in there, it would be great to know that, because we can sort of obviously refine the process as we go along.
So a couple of things. I mean, looking through these, and I'd love to hear what the other TOC members think. I think having some sort of qualitative judgments on stuff, like I think, across a couple of different lines, in terms of, do we feel like this is, an architecture that has legs? Do we feel like this is, how cloud native is it? How much of a gap does it fill? Community. I think we can find a bunch of different sort of qualitative things to actually ask and talk about. Obviously, as you move from sort of, data to sort of analysis and opinion, things get a little bit hairier. And I think, it gets harder to be candid about that stuff. But from the TOC's point of view, that's the real expertise there versus just looking at collecting facts.
Understood. So we tried to, so the first two projects we looked at were sandbox projects. So what we tried to capture were things like how it fit in with other CNCF projects. Is it sort of deployed in a cloud native way? And also there were a bunch of questions to help with sort of IP policy type decisions, like, where are the repos, what licenses do they have? Are there test processes in place, and all of that kind of stuff. So I completely agree. We do need to have more qualitative information or judgments in there, especially as we go into reviewing incubation level projects. I think that the bar was obviously a little lower for the sandbox, but yeah, we can definitely add more of that. That's a good point. Thank you.
And then one comment on the whole end user survey and engagement. Just in general, I think, people respond to these things when they're unhappy. I mean, there's definitely a bias towards that. I mean, there's a lot of, like, most people using open source, it works fine for them and they never bother talking to anybody. And so I think a big part of this is how do we make people care? And like, you can always give them free crap. Like, we can like say, hey, well, we'll pick a couple of people and give them like a t-shirt or credit to the CNCF store or something like that as an inducement to get folks to fill it out. It can be low budget and maybe it's worth doing an experiment around.
That was kind of
I'd be happy to guinea pig on that.
Give away something and whatever motivates people. I just feel like we don't get enough visibility maybe from storage as well. Maybe if we had a user group, something else. If anyone else, I don't know, in the CNCF has tried to do a survey and had better luck than we had, I'd love to hear what they use to make that happen.
And I think the CNCF, especially like SIGs, it's especially hard because it's not a single project. And I think, you know, users definitely feel affinity to projects more than they do to the CNCF in general. And so, you know, maybe finding ways to actually, you know, have the projects, you know, activate their communities to spread this stuff around too, instead of just focusing on sort of the CNCF community.
Yeah, one thing I would like to see in general in this, in all these types of surveys is some type of net promoter score, product recommendation score, kind of question to get a little bit of that qualitative thing that you're talking about, Joe. Is you know, how likely would you recommend this to a to a friend or a colleague kind of question? I mean, we found that a lot in just end user products. Is, you know, that is one of the most important questions, and you get plus points for a 9 or a 10, and you get minus points for 1 through 5. You wind up getting a score like 50 or 34 or -10, and it's a trailing indicator, but it gives you an idea of how, you know, just how overall you're doing, you know, how useful this particular project, or you could even ask this in the maintainer survey as well. That might be my feedback on the maintainer survey, is like, you know, how likely would you recommend to you know, this project to contribute to, right? And so that's just a thought of how you can kind of boil down a lot of those qualitative questions into one really important question.
Yeah, Jeff, one caveat there, just we did bear this in mind when putting some of those surveys together, but we have in the past seen, you know, competitive projects and competitive products, you know, bad-mouthing their competitors in those kinds of forums. So we just have to be very careful what we use that data for, and how we interpret it, and to what extent we can actually mitigate those kind of things, because there is a lot of potential for misinformation there if we're not careful.
I see, okay.
Sorry, I need to take myself off mute. Alex, I also noted your question about more broadly whether the TOC feel that the SIGs are providing us with useful information. I'm going to note that, and I think it's probably something some people would rather discuss offline and consolidate thoughts, and rather than thinking out loud. So yeah.
I think it's worth saying yes and thank you. Yes. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that to sound negative. I was more thinking, but I'm sure we have like other, you know, points or questions or whatever that, yeah, and we should give you our positive feedback as well as any. An engineering sort of like, you know, way, you know, you're always focused on how to make things better.
No, that's cool. I take it in the right.
Yes, we do appreciate the work that you're doing. But I think it's a good point. We should be giving you feedback. Great. Okay, Helm.
Hello.
Great. Matt Farina, you're on too, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so we want to give our annual update on the project. Matt's going to kick it off by just sharing kind of the current overview of the project, and then I will go into the status of the project and tell you about some of the things we're really excited about, and then we'll kind of wrap up by talking about how we are on the status of graduating from incubation. So go ahead, Matt.
All right. So under the Helm GitHub organization, we actually have about 20 active projects now. This ranges from the Helm client to Helm Hub and the software powering it, to charts, and then a number of supporting projects to help make everything work. Of that, we've been looking at the contributors in just the past year, and we pulled these numbers from DevStat. There was an interesting bug. I tried to grab it for the whole organization on GitHub, and the number came in fairly small compared to some of the individual projects. So there's something going on there, but this is how DevStats counts contributors. And so we've had a whole bunch of people contributing to Helm and charts, whether it's comments or pull requests or issues in just a whole variety of ways. And that, of course, across the whole organization, it came in at over 700 companies contributing to Helm. One of the numbers that we saw rise in when we switched over to get.helm.sh, that's the new download location where you can get the Helm binary from, is we have 875,000 downloads a month is what it's saying right now. And this is globally. And the biggest region was the US, and we think the biggest growth region is China. When we first launched the betas, we had a large download contingent coming from China for the Helm v3 betas, which was a fantastic thing to see. The previous download location that we're migrating everyone off from was in Google's cloud in a bucket, and it was back from when Helm was part of Kubernetes before the CNCF existed, so it's a really old bucket. And that's obviously not available in China. And so when we first saw lots of Chinese downloads coming, it was really incredible to see. And this is also, I went back and I looked at numbers from about a year ago for Helm downloads, and this is up about 50% on monthly downloads from a year ago. And then, of course, Homebrew for Mac gives us some wonderful statistics if you go digging for them. And we have about 85,000 installs a month over in Homebrew, which was another nice statistic to see. Now, these numbers are not pulled from the Helm Global because they're built by Homebrew and cached in their own system. And so this is an entirely separate installation set. Can you go to the next slide? Thanks. When it comes to charts, we have about 300 maintained charts in the chart repository. We're slowly migrating everyone over to self-hosting their charts, so that way the charts maintainers don't get in the way of the development cycles or merging. There's actually a lot going on there, and so we're trying to set up folks to be able to be self-sufficient with that. And so the Helm Hub is a place where they can list their charts, they can be publicly searchable. And so we've had some of the charts go inactive and become deprecated because people are hosting their own. And so we've got about 300 maintained charts in the chart repository right now that the community is maintaining, and numerous charts have moved over to be maintained by organizations. We've got 79 organizations now. And in the past year, we've also added a whole bunch of new maintainers from a variety of companies maintaining some of these projects under Helm. And you can see their names and organizations there. And so, Matt, back to you.
Yeah, so here's where we are as of today. The current stable release is Helm 2.14.3. The 2.x line will continue on for some time, but the Helm 3 line is approaching the end of its beta phase right now. Beta 3 is due out this week, and unless the bug count is low enough that we actually go to RC1 this week. So we're very, very excited about the tremendous amount of work that's gone on in Helm 3 over the last month or so to really kind of batten down the hatches and get that close. The very last lingering detail of the transfer of all the IP over to CNCF was the trademark on the Helm logo, and that was transferred over finally about 2 weeks ago. So we believe we are completely done on all the IP transfer work. And then next week we are super excited because Helm Summit is happening in Amsterdam. So a big group of the core maintainers will be heading out there late this week, early next week to meet with people from all over Europe. Helm 3 is due for its final release. So that's Helm 3.0.0 late in September. We're excited about using Helm Summit as basically a way for us to collect a lot of last minute kinds of opinions and tests and things like that from people in the community. And then we should have Helm 3 out in plenty of time to talk about it at KubeCon and CloudNativeCon. So, and then finally, the one thing we couldn't quite schedule the way we wanted was the security audit. We couldn't quite get the audit in before Helm 3's final release. However, we do have it scheduled. So the security audit will be done. We'll kick off the official process. We've already met with the security researchers, but we'll kick off the official process early in October. And I believe the audit itself begins somewhere around, is it the 14th or 15th, Matt, that it officially kind of?
I don't remember the date.
I don't remember if we have an exact date on that one. Okay, you can move on to the next one. We are excited. One of the things we really wanted to do with the release of Helm 3 was to do a branding update. The Helm logo and design design has remained largely unchanged since we introduced it at the very first KubeCon. And Ronan, our designer, took the opportunity here to make up a bunch of changes. Important to us was a change in color scheme that brings us closer to the CNCF color scheme. We wanted to very much indicate to the community visually the transfer of everything from the old Kubernetes org into the CNCF org. Ronan's done a great job assembling a style sheet, and there's a link down there at the bottom where you can go and check out the new logos, fonts, and the official usage guides and everything. Okay, so graduating from incubation is one of our major goals right now. So we've been carefully going through all the steps we need to. We've got multiple companies contributing, as Matt shared. We have passed at silver level the best practices audit. We have had code of conduct and governance docs and a logo wall and all that kind of stuff around for a long, long time. Really we're down to just the security audit as our last major milestone before we can consider beginning the process of the TOC vote for graduating from incubation. So we're really excited about all of that. If anybody has guidance or advice that you want to share offline or some in Slack or something on making sure that any of these other ones that we think are checked off actually need a little more work, please share that with us. We'd like for this to be as frictionless as possible. Okay, so then I just wanted to kind of wrap up by pointing out the ongoing help that CNCF has been providing us. There are a lot of things that we've been taking advantage of, but the big one right now is Luke Perkins has been helping out a lot on helping us revise the Helm documentation. And we're excited because this new change in the documentation opens us up to being able to do internationalization very easily, which is good because in the past, like the Chinese localization has been done entirely in China by Chinese engineers and is exposed through their own websites. Now we'll finally be able to roll some of that back into the official documentation. The newly structured documentation resembles the way that it was done with Kubernetes itself. And so we're very happy about that because it's important to us to have parity with the rest of the ecosystem. So I think that's all we have on the agenda today. We're really excited about the status of things and optimistic about what's really an extraordinary community that has collaborated with us to get this long transition from Helm 2 to Helm 3 done.
Fantastic. Any questions for Helm? I guess I kind of have a question, and it might actually be something that, well, we unfortunately skipped over app delivery, and we'll come back to them. And I'm not sure whether this is a question for Helm, app delivery, or both. What other mechanisms are people using when they're not using Helm, and what proportion do we think of users? I don't know quite how to measure this. Are using Helm to deploy their applications?
So Liz, I think the answer, the answer one, yes, there should be a question for app delivery. Do we have the answer to this question now? I think this should exactly be part of the work that we're engaging with right now, because application packaging and management is one of them, and that's like one of the topics we should be discussing. As of today, I can't provide an answer given that we were just formed last week.
So we have some preliminary indications that we're not sharing publicly, but that we've seen install for Tiller in Helm 2 at somewhere pushing 70% of production grade clusters with no attempt to capture what development clusters look like. And that's about the best we can do. We haven't really tried to kick off any sort of formal thing. We've just done some audits.
Impressive stuff. Awesome. Any other questions for Helm? In which case, thank you very much for the update.
One question real quick, sorry. I think as we see Helm 3 make its way to production, I'd love to break out some of these like logos and usage numbers across Helm 2 and Helm 3. Really understand, you know, how fast of an uptake are we talking for Helm 3? And I think, you know, especially considering, you know, the security audit, I assume is being run against Helm 3. Is that the case?
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So like what I think, you know, one of the things that, you know, I think obviously with Tiller, there's some subtleties from a security point of view with Tiller. I just don't want users to be confused that, hey, we're giving Helm 3 a blessing, but then we're, you know, confusing that with Helm 2. And like, you know, they're very different, you know, architectures. And, you know, obviously you all have been super, super hard at work at Helm 3. But I think really understanding sort of the uptake and making sure that there's no confusion there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think
yes, it does. And given that the release of Helm 3 is coming in the fall, right? And there's a lot of people who use this in companies and things like that going into the holiday season. I will be curious to see how the uptake is both before and during the holiday season versus afterwards when people have a chance to breathe, depending on some of these organizations. So I don't know if we should expect a massive uptake, just given the time of the year and the kinds of changes people make at that time of year.
We are already tracking Helm 3 and Helm 2 differences though, right, Matt? Downloads, sorry, not differences.
Oh, yes. Downloads are all per version, right down to patch releases and even alpha and betas. We track all of those individually.
Okay. Yeah, I just think it's two very separate streams, and I think everybody's just looking to get folks moved to Helm 3 as soon as possible. So, you know, just looking at that eyes open would be good.
All right, we've got just a few minutes left. Can we skip back to the app delivery, the SIG app delivery slides? That somehow, I don't know how that happened, we skipped over. Oh, because they're not in that version.
Anyway, so I'm Alice here, one of the chairs for SIG app delivery. Okay, we just got, Michelle just posted the slides. So just very quickly update, the SIG was just formed last week. So not a lot of actual work to report on, just very high level. App delivery, SIG is working more or less what the name indicates, everything from an end user perspective that deals with the delivery of applications, or with cloud native applications, everything from like design considerations, but big topic being packaging, delivery of applications, testing, operations, pretty much everything you have, like all of these projects available. Now you want to start, build, run, manage your applications. How do you do it? What are best practices? Which tools can you use? And really building out those best practices, and obviously closely working with projects, as before mentioned, like Helm, Flux, many of the others. We had our charter defined so far. First official meeting will be September 11th. Goal as a first step will really form a landscape. So back to your question of the list, what do people use instead of Helm? Covering this always in the broader scope for all of the other areas where it makes sense, and that we're touching which tools are out there, how can they be used. On top of this, then providing best practices and also engaging what I've seen here from a lot of others around surveys, like where do people need most help building and deploying their applications. Again, very early stage, just getting started. First deliverable really being that landscape of tools that we provide. And yeah, hope we'll be able to provide more input and more details as we go.
Super excited to see that going, coming into place. That's fantastic. That's our third SIG. SIG, provisionally entitled Core and Applied Architectures. I know there's a draft, hot off the presses, a draft that Quinton and others have been working on. So I'm sure they would welcome input into that document. Do we have anyone from, I think Lee, are you here maybe? How are things going with the?
Real well, actually. It's sort of mid-flight last week, I guess, during VMworld. There's a draft of the charter for SIG Network that is that's in Matt's hands at the moment to take an initial look. I think I probably want to confirm with him. He's ready to open that up broadly, but imminent. I think so. I don't know.
Good to see progress on that as well. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay. I think with that, we have 2 questions for any other, 2 minutes rather, for any other questions or points that anyone would like to raise.
Yeah, I'll just jump in here. For everyone who doesn't know, we did select the chairs for SIG app delivery. Alois, who just spoke, Brian Lyles, and Lee from Alibaba are our 3 chairs. And if you want to get involved, this is a great time to do so since we just completed the formation stage. Please join our mailing list, and we have meetings every other Wednesday, like Alois mentioned. We're also organizing to meet at KubeCon, so lots of really good things to look forward to. Thank you.
Amazing. Anything else from anyone else? All right, with 1 minute to go. Thank you, everyone.